Right now, the eyes of Texas are on the southern border where it is bracing for impact. This is a live look from El Paso where thousands of migrants are expected to cross into the U.S. starting tonight.
That's when Title 42, the pandemic era policy allowing officials to quickly expel asylum seekers, comes to an end. Many border cities, including El Paso, have already declared states of emergency, trying to free up resources ahead of what could be a dramatic increase in the number of people needing things like food and shelter. At the same time, the Biden administration is rolling out new rules meant to slow down border crossings.
Here to help us break down all of this is Dallas immigration attorney Haim Vasquez. Haim, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, Haim, we know Title 42, it ends today. Can you explain to people who still might not be familiar with Title 42, what it was, what it did, and what's going to happen when it expires?
Well, Title 42 was a tool used by the government during the pandemic to prevent entry from people seeking asylum or seeking to enter the country without documents. What it allowed is simply reject people. They didn't have to process them. They didn't have to hear their asylum claims, and just basically was a rejection. Now, it's not an immigration law, and that's why we're seeing an end to it right now.
And when we talk about the number of migrants that we're seeing at the southern border, I think a lot of people have the question, what's different now? Why are we seeing this increase, whereas prior to 2020, I don't feel like we talked about it quite the same way?
Well, I think there are a couple things that are affecting that. Number one, there is a lot of misinformation, people taking advantage of migrants who might be suffering from difficult situations in their countries, but they're selling them an idea that here in the United States, they just show up at the border, they can get documents, they can get a status. That's number one. And I think the second and the third one go along. There is a lot of crisis in the Southern Hemisphere, and that is coupled with a lot of unstable governments who are pushing a lot of people to seek better future, not necessarily having grounds always to seek asylum.
What about this new program the administration has unveiled? What is this?
Well, this is something unheard of. We have never seen something like this. We are going to have some regional asylum processing centers. We're going to start with Guatemala, Colombia, and Ecuador, and it's going to expand. So basically, the government is pre-evaluating these asylum claims outside the U.S. And additional to that, every person seeking asylum will have to go through a new app that CBP has to be able to present their claim, go to an appointment. Mayorkas, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, explained that if you don't do that, your asylum claim will not be heard of and you will be deported. That's important.
And, you know, the ACLU threatening to challenge those new White House orders in court. We also know that the League of United Latin American Citizens also pressed the administration on this. So to do more, what do they want to see happen?
Well, Brooke, the point that you're making is something that we already saw. During the Trump administration, some rules very similar to what we're seeing today, two people from different political parties are implementing the same kind of rules. And during that time, a federal court made an injunction and those rules were not able to be applied. So we are expecting the ACLU to file a lawsuit, because we also have to understand that these measures that are implemented right now, in some occasions will harm a possibility that is based on international law and humanitarian law, which is somebody who fears prosecution and fear of death can claim asylum. So we have a process that is not working, and these measures might not even allow this process to be worked out.
Speaking with the mayor for the city of El Paso, Haim, he called it the land of the unknown.
Yeah.
He said his city is as prepared as it can be, but it's the unknown, with people expecting as many as 15,000 a day might be crossing over into the country. What do you think he means when he says unknown?
Well, on Tuesday and on Wednesday, we already saw an increase of previous days of interactions and people presenting themselves to the border. The unknown that the mayor is explaining, which I agree with him, is that our border towns are not equipped to provide, refugee assistance. Many of these refugees and these people seeking asylum, whether they have a good claim or not, at the moment that they enter the United States, they need certain benefits. They don't know how the system works. Many of them have children, and if we don't have a system implemented to assist these border towns, we are going to have basically a level of collapse into the social system that will take down, the health industry, social services. Basically, it's one thing after the other, and these towns are suffering from it.
When you say collapse, what does that look like? Because that's a pretty scary term.
Well, when we talk about collapse in immigration law and in this process, we're looking at basically some things. One is the court system has over 2 million pending cases today. We don't have enough judges, we don't have enough prosecutors to deal with these cases. We also have an issue of an increment of people coming at the border. When we have these processes and we don't have a way of handling these cases can last for 8, 9 years before they can hear a claim. No other case will last that long in the legal system. That's the legal collapse. And also the social, economic collapse is that many people come to the U.S., they come, they're approved to come, but they don't have a work permit. They don't have a way of getting some social services. And many of these families come from low socioeconomic status, and they're going to wade into our system of health benefits.
Haim, have you had a chance? I know this is what you do for a living. You deal in cases like this every single day. Long term, what are we looking at?
Well, unfortunately, long term, what we look at is that people who really need to come to this country based on prosecution, based on fear of death, their claim might not be treated the right way. Because the more cases you have, the less you think about evaluating all of them in a different way. So, one, we will be failing international law, which is humanitarian law. And two, we really need to think that if the immigration system in our border depends on a law that doesn't have anything to do with immigration, then we need to do something about reforming the immigration system and stop talking as an election point and more as an action point where the two parties need to get together to be able to come out with something that really will work out.
And I think you touch on something so important there. It's got to be both sides coming together to deal with this issue that's been ongoing for so long now.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Haim Vasquez, former Assistant Dallas District Attorney, specializes in all things immigration. Thank you for at least allowing our viewers to have some insight and some knowledge and making this a little more understandable in what is a truly confusing situation.